Listen, this is what our elders used to say. Anyone can take away what you have in your hands, but no one can take away what is destined for you. Those who stand with us in a photo may not necessarily be our own. It is those who stand by us in our difficulties that are our true people. Every person's affairs in the world are different. Everyone's eyes may appear the same, but the perspective of seeing is different. People assume that life has come to them as they wish. However, as soon as dawn breaks, they step out to live according to others' accounts. There is nothing that belongs to them. When the mind tells us that if someone treats us badly, we should treat them in the same way, our inner self questions what difference it makes if we walk the same path as them. With time, a person changes. Relationships change. In ancient times, there was a learned Brahmin named Ranganatha. He was a great scholar. He had a wife and a son. The scholar spent much of his time in studying writing, having created many texts. If he was engrossed in his studies, he didn't even have time to pay attention to his son, Sudama. One day, the scholar's wife, in anger, asked him if he had any love for their son. You spend the entire day in your studies and writings. Do you think about his growth and education? To this, the scholar replied, I have all the time for such thoughts. The scholar was highly respected among learned men. In the king's court, everyone regarded him with great respect. The king himself had asked him several times to join the court as a chief advisor, but the scholar had refused, stating he had no interest. Meanwhile, their only son, Sudama, had fallen into bad company due to his mother's excessive love and had gone astray. Instead of going to school, he was roaming the streets with bad boys. The scholar had no idea about his son's reality while engrossed in his studies. His son had now learned to gamble, and his friends were thieves and con artists. One day, Sudama, along with his wicked friends, went to a temple to steal. A guard spotted them and brought everyone before the king. Your Majesty, these boys were caught stealing in the temple. One of them is the son of our scholar, Ranganatha. Upon hearing the guard's words, the king was stunned. It was hard to believe that the son of a scholar who preached knowledge and wisdom was involved in theft. The king immediately sent a servant to call scholar Ranganatha. Upon hearing the servant's words, scholar Ranganatha was distressed. What is this? My name is being tarnished because of some misdeeds of my son. How can I show my face to everyone now? His wife then said, Your Majesty respects you greatly. Go and ask for forgiveness. If he has the king's favor, Sudama might be spared. However, the scholar said, I cannot plead for the cause of a criminal. Even asking for such a thing is itself a crime. His wife then said, If you do not go to the king, I will die. Ultimately, with no other option and a heavy heart, he reluctantly went to the palace. In the court, his son stood with his head bowed. The scholar addressed the king, saying, Your Majesty, my son is still immature. He lacks full understanding. Please forgive him. Upon hearing this, the king replied in a serious tone, Scholar, if you plead for forgiveness publicly in my court, I will forgive your son. Humbly bowing and folding his hands, the scholar requested, Your Majesty, I ask for your mercy on behalf of my son. The king then pardoned the scholar's son on the condition that he would not steal again. After this incident, the scholar's reputation suffered a blow. Wherever the scholars went, people spoke disparagingly about their son. This caused them great distress, affecting their health. Although the son returned home, his tendency to steal did not vanish. Now he started selling his father's books without asking him. One day, when the scholar asked where all his books had gone, Sudama replied, Father, I have cleaned all the waste in the house. To him, the books were equivalent to trash. The scholar lamented, Oh, what an unworthy act you have committed. You have destroyed everything for me, and he fell silent. As time passed, the scholar's health continued to deteriorate. He was concerned about what would happen to his family after him. Despite his poor health, He was engaged day and night in the task of writing an important manuscript. Eventually, he completed the work he had been writing. After finishing the manuscript, he felt that he would not live much longer. One day, he called his son and said, "Son, there is still time. You can improve yourself. You have gone astray because of my negligence. This manuscript is invaluable. Keep it safely. I have nothing else to give you." Taking the manuscript, Sudama thought, "What will I do with this? I have no desire to read or write. It would have been better if he had given me money instead." In a few days, the scholar passed away. His death brought a mountain of sorrow upon the family. However, Sudama was indifferent to all this. He was busy searching for money everywhere. When he found nothing, he sat down in despair. As the days passed, the mother's concern for her son's situation grew. They had nothing to eat at home. One day, the mother said, "Son, you are now a grown man. Work hard to earn some money. Otherwise, we will die of hunger." Sudama, feeling dejected, replied, "Mother, nobody will give me work. Everyone avoids me." The mother decided to go to the king and ask for help. She held great respect for her husband. She thought that if she asked for help, the respect they had might lead to some assistance. Finally, she went to the royal court and said, "Maharaja, we are dying of hunger. Please help us in any way you can." Upon hearing her words, the king replied, "What help can I provide? I have asked your husband many times to serve as my chief advisor, but he refused. Your son is not worthy of any assistance. I cannot help you." The mother returned home in despair. Sudama showed his mother the manuscript that his father had given him and asked, "Why did he give me this?" The mother, sorrowfully, said, "This is a symbol of your father's knowledge." Sudama tried to read it but understood nothing. He then went to Krishnacharya, who lived next door. Krishnacharya said, "Child, there are very complicated verses in this. Only the great scholar can explain their meaning." Dejected, Sudama returned home. He tried searching for work in many places, but the people who knew his character chased him away without giving him anything. Amid all this, the mother had become weak from hunger and illness. To alleviate his mother's ill health and hunger, Sudama set out from home. As he walked, he came across a beautiful garden. The garden was filled with various flowers and fruit trees. Unable to restrain himself, he entered the garden. While he was plucking some fruits lightly, a guard saw him and caught him. By coincidence, it was the king's garden. The guard brought Sudama before the king. "Maharaja, this man is stealing fruits from your garden." Upon hearing this, the king, filled with anger, asked, "Haven't you opened your eyes yet? Are you stealing again?" Weeping, Sudama pleaded, "Maharaja, we have been starving for many days. My mother's health is deteriorating. I plucked these fruits for her." But the king did not listen to a word. He said, "If you were not the son of a scholar, I would have executed you. Now leave my kingdom at once." Sudama, unable to say anything to the king, walked towards home. By the time he reached home, his mother had died. She had been starving for many days. In grief, he performed his mother's last rites and, taking the manuscript his father had given him, left the kingdom. Only when everyone abandons us do we realize what life is. When no one is around, we remember God. When no help is received, it makes us feel powerless. It diminishes our mental strength. Learn to live on your own strength. You may not find anyone who understands your sorrow. If you learn to accept defeat, victory will come to you. Time is yours. Make it precious. You may feel that you are right. But don't be afraid of what people say behind your back. Those who continue to pursue their goals will always be talked about. Whether you reach your goal or not, don't stop moving towards it. If you want victory, everyone must strive hard. As Sudama was walking, he came across a dense forest. He thought to himself that he would spend time eating fruits here. Now, Sudama sat down under a tree and tried to open his father's manuscript to read. He felt that the secrets within could alleviate his sorrow. No matter how hard he tried, he could not understand it. He lamented, "Oh, how I wish I had learned to read and write." His father had said that this manuscript was invaluable at the time of his death. As he was pondering this, a page was carried away by the wind. Sudama attempted to catch it, but it slipped away. Eventually, he tied the manuscript in his bag and lay down under the tree to rest. At that moment, the prince of the kingdom had come to the forest for hunting. The page flying in the air reached his hand. Upon seeing it, he began to read. Someone had written a beautiful Sanskrit verse in exquisite handwriting. Thinking thus, he kept it in his pocket. As he proceeded further into the forest, he spotted a deer. While chasing it to hit, the deer managed to escape and ran towards an ancient temple. The prince followed the deer into the temple. In the midst of the forest stood this ancient temple. There were some forest dwellers worshipping there. Their priest told the forest dwellers, "Brothers, we must sacrifice a strong young man to please the deity." Just then, the prince entered the temple. Upon seeing the prince, the forest dwellers said, "A young man has come here by chance, let's sacrifice him." Upon hearing this, the prince thought, "I must not reveal my true identity. This is the territory of the enemy king." Meanwhile, the forest dwellers bound the prince. The prince said, "I am of a lowly lineage. Sacrificing me will make the goddess impure." Upon hearing this, the priest laughed and said, "The goddess knows no high or low." The prince felt despair. Even lying was not saving him. They brought the prince near the altar to be sacrificed. Then he said, "Brothers, before you sacrifice me, I have one last wish. Please fulfill it. I have a Bhojapatra in my pocket. Read what is written on it and explain its meaning. This is my only desire." Hearing his words, the priest said he would definitely do so, took the Bhojapatra, and began to read. The Bhojapatra contained 2 verses. The first verse's meaning was, "A single lie gives birth to many lies, and the liar remains submerged in misery until the end." The second verse's meaning was, "Taking a life is easy, but giving life to someone is very difficult. Once a life is taken, it cannot be returned." Upon hearing this, the prince burst into tears. When the priest asked for the reason, he replied, "Both of these verses apply to me." Hearing this, the forest dwellers realized their mistake. One of them said, "Priest, this young man speaks the truth. We have no right to sacrifice him. Let him go." The priest joyfully said, "Young man, this verse has not only saved your life but has also opened our eyes. From now on, we will not offer sacrifices to the goddess." With joy in his heart, the young prince proceeded towards the palace. The young prince was lost in thought along the way. How invaluable this Bhojapatra is. It saved my life. Perhaps there are many other Bhojapatras with such beautiful teachings that have been lost. Upon arriving at the palace, he greeted his father and said, "Father, you told me not to go hunting, saying that it results in the pointless killing of animals. But I lied to you and went, only to find myself in trouble. However, these verses saved my life." The young prince recounted the entire incident to his father. If such verses can save one person's life, they also impart a lesson in nonviolence to others. These are worth thousands of coins to me. The Bhojapatra has the number 2 written on its page. It must surely be a part of a book. Upon hearing this, King Arjunasingha called some soldiers and, showing them the Bhojapatra, promised to reward whoever finds such a Bhojapatra with a high position. Meanwhile, the Pundit's son, Sudama, had been wandering in the forest for months. In this state, he reached the city of King Arjunasingha. He asked many people for help, but no one offered him assistance. After wandering in the forest for so long, Sudama looked like a beggar. He was very hungry. Just then, a delicious aroma wafted from the palace kitchen, intensifying his hunger. He made his way towards the kitchen. There, he told the cook that he had been fasting for several days and requested 2 loaves of bread. However, the cook rudely told him to leave. But due to his hunger, he could barely move. While trying to sneak away 2 loaves of bread and putting them into his bag, Sudama was caught. In anger, the cook brought him before the king and informed him that this man was stealing bread from his kitchen. The king instructed his servants to search through Sudama's bag. At that moment, the invaluable book given to him by his father fell out along with the loaves of bread. By coincidence, the young prince, who was present there, saw it and his eyes filled with tears. Taking the book in his hands, he joyfully exclaimed, "This is the same priceless book. This is the book we were searching for." The young prince then ordered his servants, "Honor this man appropriately." The servants seated Sudama on a throne. The young prince, with affection, asked, "Friend, what is your name? Why are you begging when you possess such a priceless book?" Sudama shared his name and narrated the story of his life. Upon hearing his story, the young prince said, "I will give you 50,000 gold coins for this." Sudama could hardly believe his ears. The young prince opened the book and began reciting the verses from the first and second pages. The verses spoke of ignorance being the mother of deceit, and how, in times of distress, one recognizes their own and others' true nature. Sudama replied, "Indeed, ignorance has turned me into a beggar. If I had learned my lessons in childhood, I would have been the son of a scholar like my father." The young prince urged, "Friend, accept the value of this priceless book. Whatever is given is too little." Saying this, he placed a bag containing 50,000 gold coins into Sudama's hands. Sudama thought, "With this burden of wealth, where shall I turn? I will use this wealth to educate the poor children and to remove ignorance." The young prince replied, "You are no longer a beggar, you are a prosperous man now. If I had received this knowledge in my childhood, perhaps my father and mother would still be with me," Sudama said. With the money he received, he built a school for poor children and learned alongside them, eventually becoming a scholar like his father. Listeners, there is no age limit to learning. However, one must have the enthusiasm to learn. What one becomes in life is determined by this. The darkness of ignorance drags us into despair. If our bad actions weigh us down, our end is certain. Therefore, ensure that negative behavior does not affect you. Life will be beautiful.